The Lost Girl in the Woods, HFY Sci-Fi. The night was colder than usual. The wind carried the sound of leaves rustling and the soft whisper of the forest breathing. Ethan Walker pulled his old jacket closer around his shoulders as he made his way along the narrow dirt path leading to his cabin. He had spent the whole day gathering firewood and checking traps. But tonight, something felt strange. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. He was halfway home when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the forest. It was soft, like a child crying, faint but filled with fear. He stopped and listened. The sound came again. A little clearer this time. A voice, trembling and weak, echoing through the trees. Ethan hesitated. He lived alone for a reason. People called him strange, said he liked being far from everyone. But a child crying in the dark? That wasn't something he could ignore. With a deep breath, he followed the sound deeper into the woods. The moonlight slipped through the trees, making silver shapes on the ground. Every few steps, he would stop, listening carefully. The crying grew louder, mixed with soft, strange words he couldn't understand. He pushed through the branches and suddenly saw her. A small figure sat beside a fallen tree, trembling. Her skin was pale. No, not pale, glowing faintly blue. Her hair shimmered like silver threads, and her eyes reflected light like mirrors. She looked around 8 or 9 years old, wearing torn clothing that didn't look like anything from Earth. Ethan froze, his breath catching. For a moment, he thought maybe it was the moonlight playing tricks, but then she looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion, and he knew she was real. "Hey there," he said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl tilted her head, whispering something in a strange melodic tone. It wasn't any language Ethan had ever heard, but her voice was soft and sad. She tried to stand but stumbled, clutching her arm in pain. Ethan quickly stepped forward and caught her before she fell. Her skin was warm, not cold as he expected, and when he touched her, tiny sparks of blue light glowed around her fingers. He pulled his hand back, startled. "What in the world?" he muttered, looking at her glowing skin. The girl looked at him again, her lips trembling. She pointed to the sky, saying one word slowly, almost like she was teaching him. "Mother." Ethan frowned. "Your mother? Is she out there?" he asked, pointing to the dark sky full of stars. The girl nodded weakly and then looked down again. Her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered the same word, "Mother," before her strength gave out and she collapsed against him. Ethan didn't know what to do. Every instinct told him to run, to leave whatever this was alone. But something inside him refused. She was just a kid, lost, hurt, and terrified, alien or not. He lifted her carefully into his arms and started toward his cabin. The forest seemed darker now, heavier, as if watching him. The crying had stopped, replaced by the soft hum of the wind and the crunch of his boots on the frozen ground. When he finally reached his cabin, he laid her on the small bed by the fireplace. He covered her with an old blanket and lit the fire. The warm glow filled the room, chasing away the shadows. Ethan sat down, staring at her strange face. The blue glow from her skin pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. He tried to tell himself he was dreaming, but the heat from the fire and the sound of the girl breathing made it all too real. He noticed strange marks on her arms, faint patterns that looked almost like symbols, glowing and fading with her breath. They reminded him of stars, connected in invisible lines. Hours passed, and the girl finally stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing silver in the firelight. She looked around in confusion, then at him. "You're safe," Ethan said quietly. "You're okay now." She blinked, then whispered something again, a single word, repeating it softly. It sounded like a name, maybe hers, Alya. Ethan nodded. "Alya, huh? All right then, Alya," he said, trying to smile. "My name's Ethan." The girl tilted her head again, repeating his name in her strange accent. "Ethan." He chuckled quietly. "Close enough." Outside, the wind began to howl, and through the cracks in the window, a faint flash of light streaked across the sky. Ethan walked to the window and looked out. For a second, he saw what looked like a formation of lights moving fast, too steady, too bright to be meteors. He frowned, a chill running down his spine. Those weren't stars, they were ships. When he turned back, Alya was sitting up, her glowing eyes fixed on the window. She pointed outside and whispered, "Mother." Ethan didn't know why, but he felt something heavy in his chest, a mix of fear and awe. The girl wasn't from this world, and now whatever she came from was looking for her. He didn't understand it yet, but that night, when he decided to help a lost girl in the woods, Ethan Walker's quiet life on Earth ended, and something far greater had already begun. The stranger in his cabin, HFY Sci-Fi. The morning light crept through the old cabin windows, soft and golden. Ethan woke with a start, his mind still foggy from the strange night before. For a moment, he thought it had all been a dream. The girl, the glow, the ships in the sky. But when he turned his head, he saw her sitting quietly by the fireplace, her silver eyes staring into the flames. She was real, small, fragile, and still glowing faintly blue. The blanket around her shoulders looked too big. Her hair shimmered like strands of moonlight. Ethan rubbed his eyes, trying to make sense of it. "Morning," he said softly. The girl turned and tilted her head, that same confused but calm expression on her face. She blinked once and whispered, "Ethan." Ethan almost smiled. "You remember my name," he said. Moving closer, he handed her a piece of bread. She looked at it curiously, sniffed it, then took a tiny bite. A small smile appeared on her face. But then something happened. The fire flickered, the old radio on the shelf crackled, and the light bulb above them blinked like it was alive. The air felt heavy for a moment, like invisible static crawling across the skin. Ethan frowned. "What's going on?" he muttered. Alia looked at him, confused. Her hand glowed brighter, and the radio made a strange sound. A soft hum followed by a whisper of words that weren't human. It almost sounded like voices trying to reach her. She touched the radio, and suddenly the hum stopped. The silence that followed was sharp and cold. Ethan took a slow breath. "You did that?" he asked carefully. She didn't answer, just looked down, her eyes full of sadness and longing. She pointed at the sky again and said one word, "Mother." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to believe this was all some elaborate trick, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. He could see it in her eyes. She wasn't from this world, and she missed home. He stood up and walked to the window. The forest outside looked calm, sunlight bouncing off the snow, but in the distance, faint trails of smoke rose into the sky, like someone searching or burning something. Something about that smoke made him uneasy. It wasn't from a campfire. It was darker, thicker, more like exhaust. Ethan turned back to the girl. "We can't stay here too long," he said. "Someone might be looking for you. Or for me." He didn't know why he said for me, but deep inside, he felt that whoever had seen those lights last night might have noticed his cabin too. He packed a small bag, food, water, a flashlight, an old map, then looked back at her. "We'll go to the river. Maybe we can figure something out there." The girl stood up slowly, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. She followed him to the door, but before he opened it, she froze. Her glowing eyes widened. "What is it?" Ethan whispered. A low humming sound filled the air again, but this time, it wasn't from the radio. It came from outside, from the sky. It was deep, mechanical, and moving fast. Ethan stepped out and looked up. His heart skipped a beat. Two small drones hovered above the trees, sleek, black, and silent except for the faint vibration of their rotors. They had no human markings, just red scanning lights sweeping across the forest floor. He quickly pulled Alia back inside. "Get down," he hissed, closing the door quietly. They hid by the fireplace as the shadows of the drones passed across the window. For a long moment, they stayed silent, listening to the faint hum circling above. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sound faded away into the distance. Ethan exhaled slowly, his pulse racing. "They're looking for you," he said quietly. "Or maybe they're looking for both of us now." Alia's eyes glowed brighter, and she whispered again, "Mother, danger." Her small hands trembled as she pressed them together. Ethan leaned forward. "Danger? To her? Or to us?" She looked up, tears forming. "Mother. Far. Humans hurt," she said slowly, broken words but clear enough. Ethan stared at her, realizing the truth. Her people were out there, searching for her. But humans had already noticed them too, and that meant one thing. The world outside was about to change. He stood up, pacing the small cabin. "All right, kid," he said finally. If your mother's coming, we need to keep you safe until she finds you." The girl watched him with quiet trust. For a brief moment, she smiled. A small, fragile smile that made him forget everything strange about her. Then, from outside, came a sharp metallic sound, a branch snapping under something heavy. Ethan grabbed his old hunting rifle from the wall. The girl's glow dimmed as she hid behind the chair. Ethan moved toward the window, slowly, carefully. Through the thin glass, he saw movement. Dark figures in armor moving between the trees. They weren't drones. They were soldiers, human soldiers, scanning the area with strange devices. His stomach dropped. "They're here already," he whispered. The girl whispered something too, her hand glowing faintly. The cabin light flickered once, then went out completely, plunging the room into quiet darkness. Outside, one of the soldiers stopped, looking toward the cabin. His scanner beeped. Ethan held his breath, heart pounding in his chest. Alia reached for his hand, whispering something soft and musical. The air around them shimmered faintly, like a heat wave, and then everything fell silent. Outside, the soldier's scanner blinked once, then went dead. The group hesitated, muttered something through radios, and slowly moved on, as if the cabin didn't exist. Ethan exhaled, staring at the girl in shock. She looked exhausted, her glow fading. She had somehow made them invisible. He whispered, What are you?" The girl looked up weakly and said one word, "Friend," before collapsing into his arms. And as he held her, Ethan realized something terrifying. The world had already found them, and whatever was coming next, it was far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. The search in the sky, HFY Sci-Fi. The sun rose behind the mountains, painting the forest in soft gold, but Ethan didn't feel the warmth. He hadn't slept. The girl, Alia, still lay on the bed, her breathing slow and weak, the blue glow from her skin fading with every passing hour. Ethan sat beside her, watching the light through the window, wondering what he had gotten himself into. He had hidden many things in his life, secrets, pain, regrets, but never something that could change the world. Outside, the sound of engines echoed faintly. He stepped out onto the porch, his rifle still in hand, and froze. Far above the treetops, a silver trail cut across the sky, steady and silent. It wasn't a plane. It moved too smoothly, too precisely. Then another appeared, and another, until 5 silver streaks lined the heavens, moving in perfect formation. Ethan's heart began to race. "They're searching," he whispered. He ran back inside. "Alia, wake up," he said, shaking her gently. She opened her eyes slowly, those glowing mirrors reflecting his fear. "Mother," she whispered again, almost like a prayer. Ethan crouched beside her. "Are those your people up there?" She nodded weakly. "Mother, find me," she said, her voice trembling. "But humans stop." He frowned. "Humans will stop her? How?" Alia reached out with a shaking hand, touching the wooden wall, and for a moment, strange symbols of light appeared on it. Maps, shapes, lines. They flickered like fireflies, showing him the mountains, the river, and something hidden deep within the forest, a landing point. Ethan stared at it. "That's where she'll come?" The girl nodded slowly. "Soon." Before he could ask more, the cabin floor trembled, a distant rumble rolled through the woods, and the radio crackled again. This time not in alien tones, but in human voices. "Base command, this is Delta 4. We've located energy readings in Sector 9. Permission to engage." Ethan's stomach dropped. The soldiers were closing in. He turned the radio off quickly and grabbed his coat. "We can't stay here, Alia," he said. "They'll find us soon." The girl tried to stand, but her legs gave way. Ethan caught her again. She was lighter than he expected, fragile but warm. Her glow dimmed even more. "Don't you quit on me, kid," he said softly. "Your mother's coming, and we'll meet her, all right?" She looked up at him with tired eyes and whispered, "Promise." Ethan nodded. "Promise." He packed what he could, wrapped her in a blanket, and stepped out the back door. The forest was silent again, but this silence wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that came before storms. As they moved down the narrow path, Ethan noticed scorch marks on the ground, trees bent and blackened. He knelt down, touching the burned soil. It was warm, recently disturbed. "They've already been here," he murmured. Alia's hand tightened on his shoulder. Mother close, she said faintly, her eyes flickering with new light. Then, from somewhere above, a sudden flash of blue tore through the clouds, followed by a deep hum that shook the ground. Birds exploded into the air, and the sky turned white for a moment. Ethan looked up, and what he saw made his breath stop. A giant silver ship, miles long, broke through the clouds like a rising moon. It was silent, majestic, covered in glowing patterns that moved like liquid. The sight was so beautiful and terrifying that Ethan forgot to breathe. The air vibrated, and the snow on the trees fell like rain. Alya's eyes lit up again, brighter than ever, her glow now matching the ship above. She whispered one word, full of emotion, "Mother." Ethan looked at her. "That's her ship?" Before she could answer, his radio, even though turned off, came alive again with human voices shouting. "All units, visual contact with unidentified object. Proceed to intercept. Repeat, intercept at once." Ethan cursed under his breath. "They're going to attack." He grabbed Alya's hand and started running down the slope, branches slapping his face, heart pounding. Above them, the ship shimmered with soft light, moving slowly as if scanning the forest. A distant explosion echoed from the east. Then another, the sound of missiles cutting the air followed by thunder shook the ground. Ethan tripped and fell, shielding Alya as debris rained down. He looked up, eyes wide. Human jets streaked through the sky, firing at the alien ship, but their weapons seemed useless. Each explosion vanished before it touched the hull, swallowed by shimmering shields of light. The alien ship didn't fight back, it only hovered, glowing brighter. Ethan couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans were attacking something they didn't even understand. Alya looked at him, tears in her eyes. "They hurt her," she whispered. "Stop, please." Ethan held her hand tightly. "I can't stop them, kid," he said, "but I'll get you to her." He helped her up, both of them stumbling toward the clearing shown in the glowing map. The air was thick with smoke and strange light, every sound louder, every heartbeat faster. Then, as they reached the edge of the valley, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath them pulsed softly, not shaking, but alive. The light from above focused into a single beam that cut through the clouds, touching the earth right before them. Alya looked up, her face glowing with joy. "Mother," she said again, this time louder. Ethan could only watch as the beam widened, forming a shimmering gateway of light and mist. The air smelled like rain and metal. He stepped forward, holding her close. The light surrounded them, warm and weightless, and for a moment, everything went silent. No engines, no soldiers, just the sound of a heartbeat echoing through the air. When Ethan opened his eyes again, they weren't in the forest anymore. They stood in a vast space of light and silver walls, and a voice echoed softly in the air, calm, powerful, and full of emotion. "Human," it said, "you protected what we hold most dear." Ethan turned slowly toward the source of the voice, and what he saw next would change everything he thought he knew about fear, about hope, and about what it truly meant to be human. The light around Ethan slowly faded until shapes began to form. The floor beneath him felt smooth and warm like metal that breathed. He blinked against the silver glow and saw endless walls of crystal and moving light. It wasn't a room. It was alive, humming softly like the heart of a giant being. Alya was standing beside him now, no longer weak. Her glow was strong again, her hair floating slightly in the air as if gravity had forgotten her. She smiled, pointing ahead. "Mother," she whispered with trembling joy. Ethan turned, and the air shifted. From the haze stepped a tall figure, graceful, radiant, wrapped in flowing threads of light. Her eyes, the same silver as Alya's, carried warmth and power that made Ethan freeze where he stood. She spoke, and the whole chamber seemed to respond to her voice. "Human Ethan Walker," she said, her words rolling like music but clear in his mind. "You saved my child, and for that, your world owes you a debt." Ethan tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. "I didn't do anything special," he said softly. She was lost, scared. "I just helped." The alien woman stepped closer, her gaze softening. "To us, kindness is not small," she said. "In your act, you have done what your armies could not. You showed mercy." Ethan glanced around, trying to understand. What? What is this place? The woman raised her hand, and the walls lit up with living images. Cities made of glass floated among clouds. Oceans glowed with energy. Alien children running beneath twin suns. Then, the image shifted, showing Earth from above. The forests, the oceans, the scars of war. This, she said, is how your world appears to us. Ethan swallowed hard. You've been watching us. For centuries, she replied calmly. We watched and waited, hoping to see the light of compassion rise above your fear. The images changed again, showing human warships firing at alien vessels, missiles bursting into harmless sparks against silver shields. When we came for our daughter, your kind chose violence first, she said, her voice turning sad. But you chose to protect her. Ethan felt a strange mix of shame and pride. They didn't understand, he said quietly. We fear what we don't know. The woman tilted her head, her long silver hair moving like smoke. And yet you knew nothing of her, but you still chose to help, she said. Why? Ethan looked at Alia, who stood near him smiling softly. Because she was just a child, he said. Lost, afraid. No one deserves to be alone like that. The chamber dimmed slightly, and a soft pulse ran through the floor. The alien mother placed her hand over her heart. Then you understand us better than your leaders ever will, she said. For that, you must hear our message. The walls rippled, and new visions appeared. Not of planets, but of light traveling through the void, stars collapsing, civilizations vanishing, and then one small blue world glowing faintly in the dark. Earth. We were like you once, the voice continued. Curious, ambitious, blind to what we destroyed. We fled from our dying worlds, seeking new beginnings. But even as we evolved, we forgot what truly saves a species. Empathy. She stepped closer, her eyes meeting Ethan's. Alia reminded us of that, through you. The light intensified until the whole room felt alive. Alia reached out and took Ethan's hand, her tiny fingers warm and steady. Mother say, she whispered. You, good. Ethan smiled slightly, overwhelmed. You're welcome, he said softly, though the words felt too small for the moment. Then, suddenly, the ship trembled, a deep rumble echoing through the metal floor. The mother's calm face turned serious. They are attacking again, she said. Your military does not understand. They believe we have taken you hostage. Ethan clenched his fists. We have to tell them the truth, he said. They'll destroy everything. The alien woman looked at him with quiet strength. They will not listen to me, she said. But they might listen to you. He blinked. Me? You are human, she said. They see us as threat, but you are bridge. Speak for her, speak for us. Ethan's heart pounded. How? They won't even know where I am. The alien mother raised her hand again, and a small crystal floated toward him, glowing blue like a star. This will carry your voice, she said. It will speak through your world's waves. Let them hear you. Let them see truth. Ethan took it carefully, feeling warmth in his palm. It vibrated softly, pulsing with his heartbeat. He looked at Alia, then at her mother. If I do this, will they stop? Perhaps not all, the mother said, her tone calm but heavy. But some will remember, just as you did. The ship trembled again, lights flickering. Alia pressed close to Ethan, her eyes full of trust. You help again? She asked quietly. Ethan nodded. Yeah, kid, I'm not going anywhere. The mother extended her hand toward him. Then go, human Ethan Walker, carry our message. Before he could answer, a blinding beam surrounded him. The air twisted, sound vanished, and in a single heartbeat, he was gone. When the light cleared, Ethan stood alone in the middle of the forest once more, the cabin behind him half burned, the sky roaring with thunder. In his hand, the crystal glowed brighter than ever, whispering softly. And somewhere above the clouds, a mother and her daughter waited for humanity's answer. The forest was burning. The smell of smoke and metal filled the air as Ethan stumbled through the ash, clutching the glowing crystal in his hand. Above him, the sky thundered with explosions, streaks of fire cutting across the clouds. The alien ship still hovered far above, its lights steady, refusing to fight back. He could hear the roar of engines, human fighter jets circling like predators. Their voices echoed through his damaged radio. Orders, panic, and the cold rhythm of command. Target locked on unidentified object. Repeat. Visual confirmed. Negative. Another voice snapped. Civilians reported in the area. Hold fire. Ethan's heart raced. He was that civilian. He needed to stop them before it was too late. He raised the crystal, unsure what to do. Then it pulsed, sending a soft hum into the air. The sound spread like ripples through the forest, bending light around him. A soft voice filled his head, calm and melodic, the alien mother's voice. Ethan, they cannot hear us. Not with words of war. Let them hear you. Your heart will carry what mine cannot. Ethan took a deep breath, looked toward the burning sky, and began to speak. This is Ethan Walker, to anyone listening, he said, his voice trembling. Stop the attack. They're not our enemy. They came for a child. A little girl lost on our world. The crystal glowed brighter, amplifying his words, sending them into every channel, every signal. His voice echoed through the static of military radios and the frequencies of satellites, reaching people far away. They didn't come to harm us, he continued. They came because of kindness, because one of theirs was lost, and we showed mercy. For a moment, there was silence, no response, no confirmation, only the sound of wind and fire. Then, the crystal pulsed again, projecting images into the sky. Holographic shapes visible to everyone below. It showed Alia, the small alien girl, frightened and cold in the woods. It showed Ethan carrying her through the storm. It showed her mother watching from the stars, searching, crying. The soldiers on the ground stopped, looking up in confusion. The pilots hesitated, weapons locked but fingers frozen. What the hell is that? One of them muttered through the radio. Ethan's message continued. If we destroy them now, we destroy the proof that we can still care, that we can still be more than fear. The alien ship's light pulsed once in response, a silent salute to his courage. But then, another voice broke through the static, harsh and cold. This is command. Unauthorized signal detected. Neutralize the source. Ethan froze. He knew what that meant. Moments later, a distant rumble echoed from the valley. Military vehicles were closing in. He could see lights flickering through the smoke. Soldiers coming for him. He turned the crystal in his hand, trying to strengthen the signal. The glow intensified until the forest around him shimmered like glass. The air buzzed with energy. Come on, he muttered. Just a little longer. The first group of soldiers appeared through the trees, their weapons raised. Drop it now, one shouted. Whatever that thing is, put it down. Ethan shook his head. You don't understand, he said. They're not here to fight. A shot rang out. The bullet struck the ground near his feet, dirt flying. The crystal flared like a burst of sunlight, a wave of blue energy sweeping outward. The soldiers fell back, covering their faces, their radios sparking with static. In the distance, the alien ship responded, a column of white light shooting down through the clouds. It wasn't an attack. It was a signal, a shield forming between the forest and the sky. Ethan looked up, blinded by the brightness. Alia's voice echoed faintly inside his mind. Ethan, stop. Danger. He fell to his knees, clutching the crystal to his chest. I'm trying, he whispered. I'm trying to stop it. But humanity didn't stop. Missiles streaked upward, slicing through the clouds toward the massive ship. The alien craft glowed brighter, its shields flaring like wings of light. The missiles vanished, harmlessly dissolved in the glow. The ship didn't fire back. It simply sent a single sound, a deep resonant tone that made the whole earth hum. Every machine, every radio, every metal weapon around the soldiers vibrated and went silent. The forest filled with silence, so heavy it felt sacred. Ethan stood slowly, his face streaked with ash. He held the crystal high again, shouting toward the drones circling overhead. Can you see now? They don't want war. The crystal pulsed once more, and the light expanded outward, touching the soldiers, the machines, even the sky. It wasn't an explosion. It was peace made visible. When the light faded, the alien ship had moved higher, slowly retreating beyond the clouds. The smoke cleared, revealing the burned trees, the quiet ground, and Ethan standing alone, breathing hard. He looked down at the crystal. Its glow dim now, almost silent, but faintly, he could still hear Alia's voice whispering through it. Thank you. Ethan smiled weakly, whispering back, You're welcome, kid. Then the crystal flickered one last time, projecting a final image. The mother and daughter reunited among stars, safe, far from Earth, watching him. As the image faded, Ethan sank to his knees, exhausted but calm. He had delivered the message, and for a brief, fragile moment, humanity had listened. But somewhere deep inside him, he knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning, because once the sky had spoken, the world would never be the same again. The night after the battle was too quiet. The forest that had once echoed with engines and gunfire now lay under a blanket of ash and silence. Ethan sat near the remains of his cabin, staring at the crystal in his hand. It no longer glowed, only faintly warm like the last breath of a dying star. He didn't know if they heard him. He didn't know if humanity had learned anything. But deep inside, a strange calm had replaced his fear. The wind carried the scent of rain, soft and clean. Lightning flashed far away, reflecting across the blackened trees. For the first time in days, Ethan allowed himself to rest. But sleep never came. Sometime past midnight, the ground began to tremble again, not like before, not violent, but rhythmic, almost alive. He stood up, clutching the crystal, his heart racing. A beam of light split the sky open, stretching down through the clouds like a silver waterfall. The forest glowed in its radiance, trees bending slightly, as if bowing. Ethan shielded his eyes. No, he whispered, not again. But this time, it wasn't war. The light was soft, warm, peaceful. He could feel it in his chest. Not fear. Something else, something pure. A figure stepped out of the light, tall, graceful, glowing like the dawn, the alien mother. Her silver eyes shimmered with sorrow and gratitude. Her voice carried through the air without sound, straight into his thoughts. Human Ethan Walker, she said gently. You spoke for us when your kind chose fear. Ethan's eyes widened. You came back, he said, his voice shaking. I came for you, she replied. My daughter lives because of you. My people live because of your choice. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. I didn't do much, he said quietly. Just tried to do what was right. She stepped closer, her light wrapping around him like a soft wind. That is what makes you rare, she said. That is what your world needs most. Behind her, the sky shimmered again, and from the light descended smaller shapes, vessels, glowing softly like floating lanterns. They hovered silently, illuminating the valley in shades of blue and silver. Ethan stared, unable to speak. What is all this? She raised her hand, and the crystal in Ethan's palm glowed once more, brighter than before. A gift, she said, for your world. The crystal rose into the air, breaking into 1,000 tiny fragments that floated upward like fireflies. They spread across the sky, merging with the clouds, and a soft rain began to fall. Each drop glowed faintly for a moment before turning clear, soaking into the earth. The burned ground began to breathe again, small sprouts pushing through the ash, the air filled with the scent of new life. Ethan watched in disbelief. You're healing the forest, he whispered. The mother nodded. The crystal was not only a voice, it was a seed of restoration, she said. It will cleanse the air, mend the soil, and remember your kindness. Ethan looked down at his hands, still shaking. Why give this to us? After what we did. The alien mother's expression softened. Because one human showed mercy when others did not, she said. That is enough to begin again. She looked toward the horizon where distant fires still glowed faintly. Your species stands on the edge between destruction and awakening, she said. What you do next will decide which path you walk. Ethan took a slow breath. And if we choose wrong? Her eyes glimmered with both sadness and hope. Then the stars will wait for another who chooses right. He looked up at her, feeling the weight of her words. Will I ever see you again? The alien mother smiled faintly, her form flickering like light through water. When your world is ready, she said, we will return, not as visitors, but as friends. A soft hum filled the air, the ground glowing beneath her feet. Alya's voice echoed faintly from above. Ethan, goodbye. Ethan's heart tightened. He looked up to see the small silhouette of the girl standing near the edge of the light, waving her tiny hand, her silver hair glimmering in the glow. He smiled through tears. Goodbye, kid, he whispered. The mother extended her hand one last time, a small shard of crystal forming in her palm. She placed it around his neck like a pendant. "This will guide you when you lose faith," she said softly. A reminder that kindness reaches farther than light. The wind rose, swirling around him as the beam began to pull back into the sky. The ships rose silently, the light dimming until only stars remained. Ethan stood alone once more, the pendant warm against his chest. The rain still fell gently, but now it was alive, glowing, pure, peaceful. He looked toward the sky, where a faint silver shimmer still lingered, and whispered, "We'll try to be worth it." And far beyond the clouds, in the quiet sea of stars, a mother and daughter watched the little blue world with hope, believing, for the first time in centuries, that maybe humanity was ready to listen. Days passed since the sky returned to silence. The fires were gone. The forest was healing, and the world had begun to whisper about what happened that night. Some said it was an alien invasion that never came. Others said it was a miracle. Only Ethan knew the truth, and even he sometimes wondered if it had all been real. He walked through the valley where the ship had once stood, the ground now covered with glowing flowers that only bloomed under starlight. Their light was soft and blue, just like Alya's. They swayed gently in the breeze, as if whispering her name. The pendant on his chest still pulsed faintly with light, each heartbeat echoing like a distant voice. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could still hear her laughter, her small voice calling his name. Ethan. He had tried to tell people the truth. The news networks called him a hero, a liar, a madman, and sometimes all three at once, but none of that mattered to him. He hadn't done it for fame or proof. He had done it for a little girl who was afraid, and a mother who had crossed the stars for love. The world began to change slowly. Scientists studied the strange rain that fell after the light. The air became cleaner, crops grew faster, and diseases began to fade without reason. No one could explain it. But Ethan knew. It was the crystal's gift, the alien mother's way of saying thank you. One night, months later, Ethan stood outside his rebuilt cabin, staring at the stars. He had learned to live quietly again, but part of him always looked upward, wondering if they still watched him. The pendant glowed softly, brighter than usual, and a faint hum filled the air. He looked down, startled. The light grew warmer until it surrounded him in a gentle halo. Then he heard it. A child's voice carried through the wind, soft but clear. Ethan. Ethan's heart stopped. He turned toward the sound, and for a brief, impossible moment, he saw her, Alya, standing at the edge of the forest, glowing faintly, smiling the same way she had that night by the fire. He froze, tears filling his eyes. "Alya," he whispered. The little girl tilted her head, her silver eyes bright. She raised her hand and touched her heart, then pointed at him. "Friend," she said softly, her voice fading with the breeze. The light around her shimmered and drifted upward, merging with the stars until she was gone again. Ethan sank to his knees, smiling through his tears. "Goodbye, kid," he whispered. "You're safe now." He stayed there for a long time, the forest silent except for the wind and the soft hum of the pendant against his chest. When morning came, the valley was covered in dew that shimmered like silver. The flowers glowed brighter, spreading farther than before. People from nearby towns began to visit, curious about the light. They called it the Field of Mercy, and no one who entered it ever left unchanged. Years passed, and Ethan grew older. His hair turned gray, but his eyes still held the quiet fire of that night. He kept the pendant close, its light never fading. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he sat on the porch, watching the sky turn violet. The pendant warmed again, and a soft beam of silver light stretched from it into the heavens, connecting him to the stars. He smiled, whispering into the wind, "If you can hear me, thank you." The wind replied with a soft hum, almost like a song, and for a heartbeat, the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm. When Ethan closed his eyes for the last time, the pendant's light drifted upward, carried by a soft wind. It rose through the night, past the clouds, past the sky, until it became one more star among the millions, shining quietly beside a larger, brighter one, Alya's home. And from that night on, travelers who passed through the valley would sometimes see two stars that pulsed in perfect rhythm above the mountains. They called them the Guardians of Mercy, symbols of a bond between two worlds, born not of power, but of kindness. In the end, Ethan's story was not about war or technology or even aliens. It was about something older, something eternal. The simple act of helping a lost child, and the way that one act of compassion reached beyond the stars, changing both worlds forever.